This video is sponsored by Squarespace. As I was reading the included booklet for Kill Team Nightmare, I realized that the lore for the Mandrakes is actually pretty cool. While I had initially assumed that these shadow elf type models were simply another Dark Eldar unit, that is not even close to what these eldritch beings truly are. As it turns out, the only reason you sometimes see these mysterious creatures fighting alongside the Drukhari is that they know how to make deals with them. And what the Mandrakes truly are, at least according to the current lore, no one truly knows. Some speculate that they were once space elves, but they are now something closer to a shadow demon. Not that kind of demon. More like a classical fantasy demon or dark fairy. They love to make deals, they can travel through your shadows, they can emerge from mirrors to ambush you, their motives are mysterious, and pretty much everything about the way they are described sounds like a cross between Rumpelstiltskin and the villain from a horror movie. So while I was building my Mandrakes, I thought I would customize them just a little bit to help emphasize this horror movie vibe. The models themselves look great. These are some models where when I saw them in photos, I thought they were just a 7 out of 10, but in person, I'm like, these are easily a 9 out of 10. So I actually didn't want to kit bash them too much as I really love the sculpts. But I did want to kit bash them at least a little bit to help my personal kill team of Mandrakes stand out just a little bit from everyone else's. The solution I ended up going with was a simple head swap. The Mandrakes are built in such a way that the back of their head is separate from the front, so swapping in some spooky masks for their standard faces seemed like a logical step. Masks are a pretty common trope for horror movie monsters, and I just happen to have a ton of extra scary masks in about the right size and shape from my Daughters of Cain bits box. This was an extremely easy swap to make, and now I can keep all of those wonderfully sculpted Mandrake head bits in my bits box for a future project. This was pretty much the only major change I made to these stock models. Again, I thought they looked quite good as is. I did end up carving the noses off of the spooky Daughters of Cain masks because I thought it helped them look a little bit more alien and sci-fi rather than a Daughters of Cain fantasy mask. Beyond this, the next layer of customization I wanted to add was some unique basing elements. I picture these unearthly beings as being most at home in some sort of dark, spooky, haunted forest that exists between all worlds. Maybe a birch forest in autumn, sort of a Halloween vibe, so that is what we're going for here. So I took a look through my collection of various dried foliage. These bits specifically, I believe, are from Diorama Presepe. I made an order for them a while back, and I have more foliage than I could ever want now. And I ended up going with these dried clumps of plant. I don't know what these are, but I thought they looked really autumny and kind of alien looking at this scale, so I just glued some onto the base, and I think it looks pretty cool. I then added a few sprouts of this wheat looking stuff to the backs of some of the bases to make them look like they're emerging from a sort of heavily wooded area. As a side note, you might notice that I'm adding the longest strands of this wheat-like substance to the special characters to help them stand out a little bit more from the standard warriors. I know that's a common complaint with this Kill Team Warband, that the specialists don't look different enough from the warriors. I'm not sure if I agree with that after having the models in hand, but I thought I would do this just to help them stand out a little bit more. After this, I used some standard sand to fill in any of the remaining blank areas on the bases. And after giving them some time to dry, it was time to start painting. But before we do, I would like to tell you about someone I personally made a deal with. That's right, it's this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website and hosting platform that I have been using for centuries now because of a foolish deal I made with a square being who promised me eternal life. And it's been extremely easy to use so far. You just pick from one of their fabulously designed pre-made templates, or you can make a deal with their brand new intuitive design system, Squarespace Blueprint, which will build you a custom template based on your wants and needs and all of the data you input. No sacrifices or offerings to the Shadow Realm required. I've been using my current Squarespace website to host a gallery of my painted miniatures, all of my painting reference documents, as well as my online store, which was very easy to set up and I am told accepts a variety of flexible online payment systems. So if you need a website, why not check out squarespace.com today for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/DanaHowl for 10% off your very first purchase of a website or domain. And with our ad deal complete, let's get to painting. To begin, I primed all of the models in a basic white primer, just because I know we're going for a birch forest sort of vibe, so a white primer seemed like a good starting point. And from here, I experimented with various different paints to get a look that I was happy with. Here is the basic formula I ended up with, although I definitely varied up each model a little bit. For the base tone, I started out with a 50-50 mix of Speed Paint Medium and Speed Paint Noble Skin. And if you don't have access to this specific Speed Paint or Speed Paint Medium, I think any sort of dark, warm wash would do about the same thing, but this is the one that I liked most after doing a few experiments. I covered the entire model with this mixture using a thick watercolor brush. I just slathered this mixture over all of the models, including onto the bases. Once this was dry, I immediately wanted to establish our fall mood, so I ended up painting all of the bases, as well as all of the foliage on those bases with Pro Acryl Burnt Orange. This is one of my favorite new orange-brown colors, both for painting bases, but it also works great for things like rust and grime. Next up, I went ahead and base rimmed all of the models with a black paint because the white rims were just distracting me too much and taking away from the color scheme. And with our base colors established, it was time to get to the fun part, adding all kinds of accent colors and details. For the cloth skirts on the models, I experimented with a few different options, but I eventually ended up going with something pretty subtle and muted. Specifically, I chose to glaze on a thin layer of this speed paint Tyrian Navy. This is a very dark navy blue color, and here I mixed it with a little bit of speed paint medium to create a glaze-like mixture, which I applied just nice and thinly, glazing it on in places to give a slightly bluish look to the cloth, but making sure to leave lots of the brown-black base tone in the recesses. And at this point, you might be asking, why didn't I just paint this whole area Tyrian Navy in the first place? But I would respond that I wanted the entire model to be tied together by a single shadow color, that warm, dark black color. We're going for a really grimdark look here, inspired by artists that I'm a big fan of, like Gardens of Hecate, so I want all of our shadows to be deep, dark, and warm. I also used Tyrian Navy at this point to base coat all of the bale flame things, as well as the tattoo-like markings on their skin, and even some other details like the tips of their hair in places, just to add some variety. For the weapons, I wanted a really aged, rusty look, so I ended up base coating them with an unthinned version of another speed paint, Satchel Brown. Once this was done, I ended up adding some speed paint medium to the Satchel Brown to make it into more of a glaze, and I then used it to do some shading on various areas on the model, such as on the ropes, some of the basing, as well as on a lot of the parts of the cloth to add shading, but also to tone things down a bit in terms of saturation. And I also added some additional shading to the hair and specifically onto the masks with this color as well. Finally, with our deepest shadows complete, it's time to bring some light back into things and highlight our models up, starting by using some of this color, Ancient Stone, which is just a shade darker than pale sand. I used the controversial scrambling technique with this color. At least that's what I call it. It's sort of a mix between dry brushing or overbrushing and an edge highlight, taking some paint on my brush, wiping off about half of the excess, and then just aiming to apply highlights to the raised areas of the model where I want these pale white highlights. The results of this technique can look kind of scratchy, but I think it works particularly well when you're looking for a rough and dirty grimdark look like this. I think it even adds something to the models to have that more scratchy, less precise highlight. I used the same color to add highlights to the flame effects, but this time I added highlights to the recessed portions of the flame, not the raised parts, because we want it to be the brightest on the inside. And once that was dry, I added an overall coat of pastel sea foam to these bale flame parts to give them kind of a verdigris colored dark flame look. To finish up, I added some more of our burnt orange color to the recesses of all kinds of parts of the models to give them a really rich, earthy look, or perhaps a rusty look for the weapons. And finally, I added back on a little bit more of the wheat-looking foliage because some of it had fallen off during the painting process, and I wanted to have a little bit more on the models. And that's about it. This is my alternate take on the Mandrakes, sort of a muted, grimdark look influenced by things like horror movies and the mood of birch forests in the autumn. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you got some ideas for painting or converting your own models from it. If you liked the video, make sure to check out our previous Kill Team Kit Bash video featuring the other team from this box, the Night Lords. If you can't tell, making little kill teams has become one of my favorite projects to do. This is my 4th completed kill team, and I'm also really enjoying the game, so make sure to let me know down in the comments which kill team you want to see me paint or convert next. As always, thank you to all of our wonderful patrons for supporting the channel. I really couldn't do this without you, so thank you so very much. This week, I would especially like to thank JT, Fixit, and Strange Devices. If you'd like to gain access to all kinds of fun extras, see your name up in the credits scrolling by right now, or gain access to our extremely inclusive, exclusive Discord server, you can do so over at patreon.com/Dana Howl. And with that said, thank you so much for watching, and I will see all of you in the next video.